Imagine staring at your banking app right now, watching that number glare back at you from the screen. Maybe it's $312, maybe it's 47 if you're lucky this week. Either way, that first $1,000 might as well be $1,000,000 when you're looking at where you stand today. But what if I told you that once you cross that initial milestone, saving the next 10,000 becomes exponentially easier? Not just a little easier. Dramatically, mathematically, psychologically easier in ways that will completely reshape how you think about money forever. This isn't some motivational fluff designed to make you feel better about your current situation. This is documented science that explains why most people remain financially stuck their entire lives, while a small percentage seem to effortlessly accumulate wealth. The gap between these two groups isn't about intelligence, luck, or even starting income. It's about understanding the invisible forces working inside your brain every single time you make a financial decision. I'm Tim, and on this channel, I help you actually understand money so you can make calm, confident decisions about your life. If that sounds helpful, go ahead and hit subscribe and stick around, because once you really get what we're about to walk through, the way you look at that balance in your banking app will never feel the same again. Your mind is actively sabotaging your financial success right now, and it's doing so for reasons that made perfect sense 50,000 years ago, but are completely counterproductive in today's world. Once you understand these psychological mechanisms and learn to work with them instead of against them, saving money transforms from an exhausting uphill battle into something that feels almost automatic. The difference between people who build substantial wealth and those who don't comes down to crossing a critical psychological threshold that most never reach. That threshold isn't about your salary, your background, or your circumstances. It's about reaching a point where your brain stops fighting your financial goals and starts supporting them. And for most people, that magical transformation happens somewhere around that first $1,000 saved. But before we dive into the mathematics that prove this point, let's talk about what's really happening in your head when you try to save money. Right now, your brain is operating with ancient software designed to keep our ancestors alive in a world where resources were scarce and unpredictable. When food was available, you ate it immediately because there was no guarantee it would still be there tomorrow. When shelter was found, you claimed it instantly because waiting meant potentially freezing to death. This survival programming is still running in your modern brain, constantly pushing you toward immediate gratification over long-term planning. Every time you see money in your account, your ancient brain screams that you should spend it now on something tangible and immediate. What if the money disappears? What if this opportunity never comes again? What if you need those resources right now for survival? Of course, this thinking is completely irrational in our current world, where your paycheck arrives predictably and grocery stores remain consistently stocked. But your brain doesn't know that. It's still operating as if scarcity and uncertainty are the default conditions of existence. This is why building that initial nest egg feels like such an overwhelming battle. You're not just managing your budget or controlling your spending, you're fighting against millions of years of evolutionary programming that's telling you to grab resources immediately whenever they become available. Your brain interprets every act of saving as a dangerous mistake that could threaten your survival. But here's where things get fascinating. There's a psychological concept called temporal discounting that explains why your brain values immediate rewards so much more heavily than future benefits. That $50 sitting in your checking account feels incredibly real and spendable right now. But that same $50 growing in an investment account for your future self feels abstract and distant. Your brain literally processes these as two completely different types of resources. This creates what researchers call the house money effect, where your mind treats different sources of money as fundamentally different things. Money from your regular paycheck feels serious and important, difficult to part with. But money from unexpected sources like tax refunds, gifts, or even finding cash in old clothes gets mentally categorized as play money that you can waste without consequences. These psychological quirks are making financial decisions for you every single day without you even realizing it. Most people go their entire lives never understanding that their brain is constantly playing accounting tricks that keep them broke. Every dollar should be treated the same, regardless of where it came from, but your mind refuses to see money this way. Then there are the money scripts buried deep in your subconscious, beliefs about finances that got programmed into your head during childhood and now control your adult behavior. Maybe you grew up hearing your parents argue about money constantly, so your brain now associates having money with conflict and stress. Maybe you heard phrases like, "We can't afford that," so often that your mind genuinely believes you're not the type of person who gets to have financial security. Or perhaps money was never discussed in your household at all, creating this weird shame around even thinking about building wealth. Like wanting financial security somehow makes you greedy or shallow. These invisible scripts are making your financial decisions for you every single day, and most people never even realize they're there. The really frustrating part is that your brain has been specifically designed to prioritize survival over wealth building. For thousands of years, the humans who lived long enough to pass on their genes were the ones who grabbed immediate resources when they were available. Your brain is still running this ancient software that sees delayed gratification as a potentially fatal mistake. So when you're trying to save money, you're literally fighting against your own biology. Every time you choose to put money aside instead of spending it, you're going against every instinct your brain has developed over millennia. And your mind is going to resist you every step of the way. This is why those first few months of saving feel so incredibly difficult. You're not just changing your spending habits, you're rewiring fundamental psychological patterns that have been running automatically your entire life. Every time you choose to save instead of spend, you're building new neural pathways while fighting against incredibly strong existing ones. But here's where the story becomes truly interesting. Once you hit certain psychological thresholds, something remarkable happens. Your brain stops seeing saving as deprivation and starts seeing it as achievement. The same mental mechanisms that were working against you suddenly flip and begin working for you. There's something called self-efficacy, which is basically your belief in your own ability to succeed at something. When you have $0 saved, the idea of having $10,000 feels completely impossible. Your brain can't even picture it happening, so it doesn't try. But once you hit that first $1,000 milestone, something clicks. Your mind suddenly has concrete proof that you're the type of person who can save money. This isn't just feel-good psychology. This is measurable, documented behavior change. People who successfully save their first $1,000 are exponentially more likely to save their next 1,000 than people who have never saved anything. It's like your brain rewrites its entire story about who you are and what you're capable of accomplishing. And here's where the mathematics start getting really interesting. That first $1,000 is almost entirely dependent on your behavior and your ability to spend less than you earn. But once you have money saved, compound growth starts doing work for you. Even at modest returns, your money begins earning money, which earns more money, which earns even more money. Let me show you exactly how this works with real numbers that are going to change how you think about every financial decision you make for the rest of your life. Let's say you decide to save just $100 every single month. I know that might seem impossible when you're looking at your current budget, but stick with me because the math is about to get very interesting. At $100 per month, it takes you about 10 months to save your first 1,000. 10 months of saying no to things you want. 10 months of feeling like you're making zero progress. 10 months of your friends thinking you've lost your mind because you won't go out to eat anymore. Those 10 months feel like an eternity because your brain is constantly reminding you of all the stuff you could be buying instead. But here's where things start getting interesting. That same $100 per month, after you've already got some money working for you, starts behaving completely differently. Let's say you keep saving that $100 monthly, but now you're earning a conservative 7% annual return on your investments. Nothing crazy, just basic stock market returns that have been happening for decades. Your second 1,000 takes about 9 months instead of 10. Your brain barely notices this difference, but the pattern has already started. Your third 1,000 takes 8.5 months. Your fourth 1,000 takes just under 8 months. By the time you're working on your 10th 1,000, it's taking you less than 6 months to save each additional 1,000. Now, we're not just talking about time anymore. We're talking about the fact that your money is literally working harder than you are. While you're sleeping, while you're at your day job complaining about your boss, while you're binge watching Netflix, your investments are out there making money. By the time you hit $10,000 saved and invested, something absolutely mind-blowing happens. Your investments start generating enough returns that they're doing a significant portion of the heavy lifting. At 7% annual returns, your $10,000 is earning about $700 per year without you doing anything. That's like getting almost 7 months of your $100 monthly savings for free. Now your brain starts to get it. You start checking your investment account balance, not with dread, but with genuine excitement. You start seeing those monthly gains and thinking, this is actually working. The same psychological mechanisms that made saving feel impossible are now making saving feel addictive. This is when people start doing things that seem crazy to their broke friends. They start looking for ways to increase their monthly savings. They start getting excited about tax refunds, not because they can blow the money on something fun, but because they can dump it into their investments and watch it grow. They start seeing expensive dinners not as treats they deserve, but as opportunities they're giving up. Your brain has completely rewired itself. Wired. Instead of seeing saving as deprivation, you start seeing spending as the thing that's depriving you of your future wealth. This psychological flip is so powerful that people often describe it as life-changing, like they finally understand a secret that everyone else is missing. And here's the really beautiful part. The more money you have working for you, the less dependent you become on your own contributions. Remember, we started with you saving $100 per month, which felt impossible. But when you have $50,000 invested at 7% returns, that money is earning about $3,500 per year on its own. That's almost 3 times your entire annual savings contribution happening automatically. At this point, you could literally stop saving new money entirely and your wealth would continue growing. But most people don't stop. They get so excited by watching their net worth climb that they start saving even more aggressively. They realize they're not just building money, they're building freedom. The psychology gets even more interesting when you understand what money really represents. Most people think money is about buying stuff, but wealthy people understand that money is about buying choices. When you have 0 savings, you have 0 financial choices. You take the job you can get, not the job you want. You live where you can afford, not where you want to live. You make decisions based on what you can afford this month, not what's best for your future. But when you have $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 saved, you suddenly have options. You can take risks that broke people can't afford to take. You can quit a job that's making you miserable because you have a buffer. You can invest in yourself, start a business, or take advantage of opportunities that require upfront capital. This is why wealthy people say the first $100,000 is the hardest to save. It's not just about the compound interest, though that's certainly part of it. It's about the psychological transformation that happens when you prove to yourself that you're capable of building wealth. Your entire relationship with money changes. Most people never experience this transformation because they give up during those brutal first 10 months. They look at their tiny savings account balance and think, this isn't working. They don't realize they're literally months away from the psychological breakthrough that would change their entire financial trajectory. The people who push through those first few $1,000s discover something that seems almost magical, but is actually just mathematics and psychology working together. They discover that building wealth isn't about making huge sacrifices forever. It's about making small sacrifices temporarily until compound growth takes over and starts doing most of the work. But here's what nobody talks about when they're explaining compound interest. The real power isn't just in the mathematical growth. The real power is in how it changes your behavior once you see it working. People who successfully build wealth don't just save money and forget about it. They become obsessed with optimization. They start looking for ways to increase their income specifically so they can invest more. They start paying attention to fees and tax implications because they realize those seemingly small differences compound over decades. They start making financial decisions based on their future wealth rather than their current circumstances. This behavioral change is so profound that it often affects every area of their life. They become more intentional about how they spend their time. Because they understand that time and money are connected, they start thinking long-term about everything, not just their finances. Meanwhile, their broke friends are still making the same financial decisions they made 5 years ago, wondering why nothing ever changes. They're still buying lunch every day because it's only $8. They're still financing cars they can't afford because the monthly payment seems manageable. They're still living paycheck to paycheck despite getting multiple raises because they've never learned the difference between looking wealthy and actually being wealthy. The really frustrating part is watching these same friends complain about money constantly while doing absolutely nothing to change their situation. They'll spend $40 on drinks they'll consume in 3 hours, then claim they can't afford to save $20 a month. They'll buy a $1,000 phone on a payment plan, then say investing is too risky. The cognitive dissonance is absolutely stunning. But here's something that's going to make you either laugh or cry, depending on your current situation. The average American spends more money on coffee in a year than they have in their emergency fund. Let that sink in for a minute. People are literally more committed to their caffeine addiction than they are to their financial security. And then they wonder why they feel anxious about money all the time. This isn't about shaming people for buying coffee. This is about understanding that small financial decisions compound just like investments do, except they compound in the wrong direction. That $5 latte every weekday adds up to $1,300 a year, $1,300 that disappears forever, providing nothing but temporary satisfaction and a mild energy boost. Now, imagine if that same $1,300 went into investments, earning 7% annually. After 10 years, it would be worth over $18,000. After 20 years, it would be worth over $53,000. That daily coffee habit literally costs you $53,000 in future wealth. Suddenly, making coffee at home doesn't seem like such a sacrifice, does it? But this is where most financial advice completely misses the point. Financial experts love to shame people about their spending habits without understanding the deeper psychological issues at play. They'll tell you to skip the lattes and bring lunch to work, but they won't explain why your brain is so resistant to these changes or how to actually make them stick. The truth is, most people's spending isn't about the money at all. It's about emotion. They're buying lunch because they hate their job, and that 20-minute break feels like the only good part of their day. They're buying clothes they don't need because shopping gives them a temporary hit of dopamine in an otherwise depressing routine. They're going out to bars because they're lonely, and spending money feels like the only way to have a social life. Understanding this is crucial because you can't solve an emotional problem with a mathematical solution. Telling someone who's buying happiness to just stop spending money is like telling someone who's drowning to just stop getting wet. It completely misses the underlying issue. This is why the first $1,000 is so psychologically challenging. You're not just changing your spending habits, you're changing your entire relationship with money and emotions. You're learning to find satisfaction in delayed gratification instead of instant pleasure. You're rewiring decades of conditioning that taught you spending money equals feeling better. The people who successfully make this transition don't do it through willpower alone. They do it by replacing their spending habits with saving habits that provide similar emotional rewards. Instead of getting excited about buying something new, they get excited about watching their investment balance grow. Instead of feeling good about treating themselves to dinner out, they feel good about adding another $100 to their portfolio. This psychological shift is so powerful that it often happens without people even realizing it. One day they're checking their investment account and they notice they're more excited about a $200 gain in their portfolio than they would be about spending $200 shopping. That's the moment when building wealth stops feeling like a sacrifice and starts feeling like a game they're winning. And here's where the mathematics get absolutely ridiculous in the best possible way. Once you have $20,000 invested, your money is earning about $1,400 per year at 7% returns. That's more than most people spend on coffee, lunch, and impulse purchases combined. Your money is literally funding your lifestyle while continuing to grow. At $50,000 invested, your returns are about $3,500 annually. That's almost $300 per month that you're earning while you sleep. At this point, your investments are generating more passive income than most people save from their active income. You've essentially created a part-time job that never calls in sick, never asks for time off, and works 24 hours a day. The choice is yours. You can keep making excuses about why this won't work for you, or you can start that brutal but brief battle against your own impulses. The first $1,000 isn't just harder because of the math, it's harder because you're literally fighting your own brain's ancient programming while building completely new psychological pathways. But once you break through that barrier, compound interest and compound psychology work together to make wealth building feel almost automatic. Your future financially free self is waiting on the other side of that first milestone. The only question is whether you're willing to fight through those initial months to get there. If this helped shift how you think about that first $1,000 and you want more videos that actually explain money in a way real people can use, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I'm Tim. This is where we build calm, confident investors one video at a time, and I'll see you in the next one.